guys. Well, with everything that has happened in the past few days, I just felt I needed to make a video because if I waited, this video would be super long. So I feel like by doing it sooner than later, I can cut down on some of that time because I always have something to talk about. So it feels like a completely different world that we're living in right now, and I've never experienced anything like this in my entire life. And my kids keep talking about how this is something they're going to remember forever, and they're definitely going to be telling their grandkids about it. So even they can feel that this is something pretty monumental. So before we get into all of that, because I do have a lot to say about all of it, I thought I would go in order. I would go in order of how things played out over this week, just starting with a journal entry that I wrote on March 10th, and how that just went right into March 11th, 3/11, and we'll just go from there. Okay, so I wrote this in my car on March 10th. I didn't have a lot of time, so I'm probably gonna pause and fill in things that I left out. But I wrote, yesterday, the Lord showed me a message in patterns. I saw a post about messages that the world tells you versus the Lord. So I'm going to put that up on my screen right here. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This was the first pay attention thing of the day for me. I saw that, and normally, I see a lot of memes and positive quotes and inspirational images all throughout the day on social media, but I seldom feel the urge to take a screenshot. But when I saw this one, I just felt, take a screenshot of that. So I did. I talked about this in my last video message. The world says, be true to you. But Jesus says, be true to me. The world says, put yourself first and believe in you, believe in yourself. Jesus says, put me first and believe in me. This is what Satan is using right now to attack women and deceive them. He's telling them, you're not free. You need to be freed. Free to be you. Explore yourself. Do what makes you happy. Discover who you are. Follow your heart. And you hear some of that and you think, well, that doesn't sound so bad. I agree with that. But let me continue. Jesus is saying, there is freedom in my atonement. I have paid the price and broken your chains. Explore me and my gospel. Do what makes God happy. Seek His will. These women go to the world for truth, and happiness. And carefully, they are led off the path. It's a false security. They are struggling with insecurities. So they're looking for that security. And I'm gonna kind of paraphrase this next part because I don't wanna say names, but there is someone in my family tree who openly struggles with these insecurities. And over the past couple of years, I have watched her as she's gone down this path, and she's followed the world to find her truth, to find what makes her happy, to discover herself, and to be what she calls set free. And in order for her to do that, she felt she needed to leave the church and leave the path. She got divorced, she went down that road. She's been looking for happiness ever since and hasn't found it yet. She'll post several posts a day on Instagram of all the things that she's doing to find happiness. And it's always either one of two things. It's very new age driven, so she'll post a lot of new age things that she's trying, and she'll post a lot of quotes from leaders in the new age world, or she'll post things about her sexuality. Based off of what she posts, she spends most of her day at the gym. She's taking all kinds of classes to make her body the best that it can look. So just about every picture she posts is her in a sports bra, tiny shorts, working on her abs, working on her biceps. She's been taking chair dancing classes. She's already done the pole dancing classes, and she posted all of those videos, and she's now doing chair dancing classes. And it very much looks like what I saw at the Super Bowl halftime show. It's a lot of that. And she'll record several videos of herself doing these chair dances and posting several uploads throughout the day. So my feed just gets bombarded with all of her videos of her dancing on chairs and poles, and videos of her dancing with firemen and other men. And my reason for sharing this is you can see that there's this underlying sadness that she is looking for happiness. She's looking for security and she's not finding it. And she keeps thinking that the next class she signs up for might bring her that happiness, or the next program she signs up for to discover herself and who she is, she's going to find that happiness. Or each day as she comes across different men and explores herself with them, she's thinking, maybe I might find happiness in him. Every day as she's working on her physical appearance and her body, and she's posting that, she's thinking, okay, maybe I'll find happiness in this. Maybe if I just get a little bit more tone, a little bit more fit, just a little bit more, maybe I'll find happiness there. And every day she's showing to the world, I'm working on me. I'm out for me. This is all about me. Me, me, me. Look at me. Look at me dance. Look at me lift my weights. Me, me, me. There's no pictures of service or no inspirational quotes of how to help other people and serve your fellow man, right? Take care of your neighbor. It's always me, 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 me. And we've talked about that before with this younger generation and the me, me, me mindset. I want happiness. I want it right now. Look at me. What about me, 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 my needs, me, me, me. And I see that all the time throughout the day with her posts. And there's probably a post every 10 minutes all throughout the day. So I had been thinking about that when I saw this post on Facebook about what the world tells you versus what the Lord tells you, how they're drastically different, completely opposite. One is very much black and one is very much white. She buys a new bikini every day and posts pictures, what do you think? Always looking for reassurance from other people. What do you think about me dancing in this video? What do you think about this new bikini? What do you think about this new man I'm dating? Because the opinion of the world matters most to her. She's looking for that reassurance and she's not finding it. So I wrote, she's fallen for the message that to be empowered, you need to be in the driver's seat. If men desire you, you've accomplished something. The more men, the better. Don't stick with one man, you limit yourself. Flaunt what you've got and be desired. And I see this happening with so many women in the world today. I see this happening with people I know and people I don't know. That they're going to the world for their worth. And the world is telling her to look inward. Look inside of you. But the Lord tells us to look upward. Look to Him. Jesus says, forget about yourself. Follow me. Serve. All right, so that's the first thing that's leading up to all of this. That's the first thing I noticed that day. Then number 2, I wrote, then someone sent me a post from a man who has gone apostate. His post was an attempt to get people not to trust the leaders of the church. He's a very well-known person with a lot of followers, and I'm just going to read what was sent to me. He wrote, a few days ago, I was given a warning about our community, so his group, his apostate group. It took a few days of prayer and discussion to get over the shock. The drama with Chad and Lori has emboldened unscrupulous local church leaders across the United States to use memberships to different communities as a sign of apostasy. Then he puts the acronym for his group, and it says, PTZ membership will be used as grounds for excommunication. Remember, there is a difference between being wicked versus being evil. Being wicked means that people act in a certain way because they believe they are acting in righteousness. Being evil means openly following Satan. These distinctions are important and must be remembered when we are dealing with injustice and unrighteous dominions. So he's saying that the local leaders of the church are acting in unrighteousness. They're operating in unrighteous dominion, and that this is not good. So he's getting people to turn against their local leaders, sort of be fearful of them, not trust them. And he's saying that, they're telling me that people who belong to my group, my organization, that they're going to be excommunicated if they stay members of my group, and this is wrong. And so he's turning people against their leaders. This is someone who is connected to Chad and Lori Daybell, who has connections to them and connections to all of these apostate groups. Shortly after this, I was sent another post made by a woman who is sounding the alarm like me, but it took the Chad Daybell story for her to sound the alarm. In her post, she reveals all of these apostate people's motives, and according to her, the majority of them are out for money, buying properties, guilting other people into believing that they play a role in their Zion, so they must invest their money. And when they invest their money, they're guaranteed a role in the last days. These people all make money off of prophecies, the last days, dreams and visions, energy healing, spiritual gifts, etc., etc. They all have made a business out of it. So as I was looking through her post and reading all of her comparisons of certain people, that's the one thing I notice, is that they all have made some kind of a business out of these things. They're making money off of it. And I wrote, which is a sure road to apostasy. And I've talked about that before in past videos. Okay, so number 3. Then someone posted on social media that she was announcing her excommunication. She had chosen to leave the church. So it was sort of her coming out. She had freed herself a year ago and says that she is now happy. Now, she is someone that I referenced in a past video as someone who suffers from a lot of sickness and illness, yet she has a healing business where she charges money to help other people feel good, be healthy, and be healed, all done through energy work and spiritual gifts. Now, I want to say, as I read through her post, it was really long and it just popped up in my feed. There it was. I only know her through Facebook. I've never met her in person, and my heart goes out to her. As I read through this, I felt this sort of underlying sadness. And even though she said, you know, this was really hard and overall it was the best choice for me and I'm feeling really good now and really happy, I still could feel this underlying sadness and sort of this, I'm looking for reassurance. Can someone out there give me some reassurance that I made the right choice? So again, looking to the world, looking to others to find that security. And there was just so many comments that came in. You made the best choice. You did the right thing. It was astounding. I'm just going to show you some of these comments. Let freedom lift you up where religion and God let you down. Thank you for sharing. So she's saying, in God there's not freedom. God has let you down. So let freedom lift you up. And the way you find freedom is by leaving God, leaving church, leaving religion. Then you're truly free. Then another one. To thine own self be true. Blessed be. We just talked about that. That's what the world will tell you. To thine own self. Me, me, me. And I was really surprised to see that a lot of people that I know through Facebook, there's a lot of these people that I've never met in person, but I know they follow me, they watch my videos. But the majority of these people that I know had sort of a falling out with me when I came out with that video series last fall, where I came out and spoke out against energy healing, energy work, and a lot of these wolves in sheep's clothing, and a lot of these apostate groups. I spoke out against all of that. And I received heat for that from a lot of these people. They unsubscribed from my channel, they stopped following me, they attacked me all over Facebook and tagged me on lots of posts and sent me personal messages day after day, just really upset with me, and I had to block a lot of these people. But I'm seeing that these people have been commenting on her post saying, good for you, way to go, how can I do what you're doing? How did you come to this conclusion? I'm just curious, what did you read? Send me what you read, I want to read it too. And it just showed me right there that a lot of these people, their heart has already left. It's already left the path. Even though their body is physically still on the path and they're going through the motions, you know, going to church, carrying out their callings, their heart hasn't been there. They haven't had that spirit with them. And there's been more of the spirit of contention, the spirit of offense. And it's now clicking. It's now making sense as to why these people were so upset with my message, because they're already on that path. And as I've shared before, time and time again through so many of my videos, as people go down this path, it leads far away from the straight and narrow path, from the covenant path. It's not a loop that comes back. It's not a little shortcut. It's a path that goes completely in the opposite direction. And as I watch time and time again, people step off the path because they're curious, because they've read a book, because they went and watched someone speak, they attended a workshop and it triggered something and they became curious, they had questions, and they started exploring those questions, and before they know it, they've left the path. Whether or not they're physically still standing on it, their heart is somewhere else. While they've been struggling to serve two masters, their heart has already chosen which master they're going to serve. And I don't mean for that to sound harsh, but it is what it is. It's the truth. And so what surprised me is seeing all these other women, so many of them just saying, you know what, I agree with you. I'm headed down this path myself. I'm having doubts myself. I'm going through a faith crisis as well. So this is really refreshing to see you so happy, to hear how this has been a benefit for you. And so now I might consider doing this too. I might consider also leaving the church. And there were so many women. So there have been 539 likes. That's a lot of people liking this. 406 comments, which I've read through, and the majority of them are saying, yes, way to go, so happy for you, and 13 shares. So as I got pondering over this, as I was reading through this and reading all of these other people who are going through the same thing, pursuing that same path, ready to make that same decision, or already have and are giving other women that support and encouragement, I noticed that the majority of them are women. This is women. This is what Satan is doing right now to attack women. I talked about this in my last video message. Why is he going after the women? I talked about why he is. We play a significant role right now on the timeline. Right now, our prophet has told us that. Satan knows that. He's doing all that he can to shake our faith, distract us, deceive us, blind us, so that we can't do what it is we were really sent here to do, to help gather Israel. Again, not to build our own empire. Anyways, there's so many other people who have also gone down this road or are going down it right now. And as I was pondering this, I wrote, I think these people feel some guilt about what they are doing. And what I mean by that is what they're teaching, what they're promoting, what they're selling. So it's easier to leave the church so that they can be free to do what they want. It's like they're cutting those strings so that they don't have that worry in the back of their mind that what if I'm doing something wrong, or what if someone approaches me about this, or what if this costs me my membership. If they take that step first and say, you know what, I choose to remove myself, to remove my membership, then I'm the one in control. I'm the one in the driver's seat. I'm empowered because it was my choice first. And now I feel liberated. I'm free. That's what they're all saying. That's the pattern that I'm noticing. I wrote, they bought the lie that by leaving the church, by leaving the gospel, by leaving Jesus Christ, they are free. But they have chosen their master. And he is the master of bondage. That's the deception right there. They have left power and protection and true freedom for Satan's lies. It's a false security. The spirit is gone and they have lost that ability to discern. So as I pondered this, I kept feeling, you know what? Right now, if ever there was a time, this would be the time where you do not want to leave the path, where you do not want to ignore the words of a prophet. Right now is the time where you would not want to remove yourself from the gospel, from the church, from your role, your divine mission of why you were sent here. And I'd say there never is a good time to remove yourself. But if you're gonna do it, this time would probably be at the top of the list of when not to do that. Now, I was seeing all of this prior to March 11th, prior to when everything kind of just got real. So number 4, later, someone sent me a post about the Relief Society General Presidency encouraging the women to study the priesthood. I have a screenshot of that right here, and I have links to this down below. So as my day starts out with that truth of the world versus the Lord and the message that the world is sending right now and how it contradicts the message that the Lord gives us. So I'm seeing that, then I'm seeing it take place. I'm seeing women and men posting about how they've left the church and encouraging people not to follow the leaders of the church, how the leaders of the church have been deceived or they have become apostate themselves and how we shouldn't be listening to them. So I'm seeing that happen in real time. Like, this is getting real. Things are getting real. They are happening. It is happening so quickly. Then I'm seeing the leaders of the church and the women leaders, the Relief Society General Presidency, encouraging the women to study the priesthood. And so I'm seeing what's going on here. I'm seeing Satan's plan and what he's trying to do right now and where he's being successful. And then I'm seeing the Lord's plan and I'm seeing how he is counteracting that. And it's becoming so surreal. So after writing all of that, after writing those 4 points in order of how they happened, I wrote, today I woke up to hearing Glenn Beck on the radio talking about how we, America, are punishing ourselves when we sin against the covenant. So it caught my attention as I was getting ready for the day. I was listening to what he was saying. Keep in mind, I don't always listen to talk radio, so it was interesting that I happened to turn it on. He said, we destroy ourselves. It's not God, it's his law. It's a natural law. After that, I went to the temple and I prayed for the Spirit to enlighten me. While in the waiting room, I felt prompted to look up the word restoration. And it was a long wait, by the way. I looked this up in the topical guide. It showed Alma chapter 11 verse 44. So that stood out to me because it's 144. It's a number I see all the time that says pay attention. There was that number. I went there and read about Zizram trying to convince the people that Amulek was breaking the laws. Amulek taught that Jesus does not save people in their sins, only the repentant. He then spoke of the second death. So let me pause right there. He's saying you have to be repentant. You have to have that change in your heart, that desire to change and to call out to Jesus for him to save you. You can't just continue going on every day sinning further off the path without that desire to change, without that desire to be saved. If you don't want to be saved, the Lord can't save you. It's something you have to want. You have to ask for it. You have to have that change in your heart, that desire. So he's saying this. And then he spoke of the second death. Those who die in their sins die twice. So think about that for a minute. We all are going to die once. We're all going to die a physical death. But those of us who die while in our sins, while rebelling against God, we're going to die twice. And he talks about how after that second death, there isn't a third death. So we can't escape that death. You know, a lot of times people view death as an escape, a way to get out of your problems, a way to get out of your suffering. But on the other side, if you're still suffering, you can't die a third time. You can't find that relief, that escape through another death. The only way to relief is through Jesus Christ, through his atonement. So there were a few verses that stood out to me. I'm going to share them with you. And the first one is in Alma 12:6. It says, "And behold, I say unto you all, that this was a snare of the adversary." So he's calling it for what it is. This is a trap. This is what Satan is doing right now to lay a trap, which he has laid to catch this people, that he might bring you into subjection unto him, that he might encircle you about with his chains. So are you free? No, you're not. It's such a lie. That he might chain you down to everlasting destruction, according to the power of his captivity. I happen to already have that underlined. But as I was sitting there in the temple reading that, I thought, whoa, this is all coming together. Here I was pondering about this the day before, not because I wanted to, but I really felt that the Lord impressed this upon my mind. He was showing me these things that are happening right now in my day, in real time, showing me with individual people, look, this is real. This is happening right now. This is what Satan is doing, and it's working. Not with everyone, but with a lot of people, and especially with my daughters, who I care about so much. And I could just feel this sorrow, this sadness that Satan is being successful at pulling a lot of his daughters off the path, and that they're all working together to help encourage and motivate each other to continue down that path. When I was led to the scripture and I was reading about it, it was like this confirmation, this witness that yes, this scripture is speaking to you right now in your day, that Satan has laid a snare to catch the saints, to catch the sisters of the church, to bring them into subjection unto him. So it's a lie. He's saying, come follow me. You're going to find freedom down this path. You're going to be truly liberated and empowered. You're going to feel secure. You're going to find who you really are, and you're going to rise above your potential, find your destiny, unlock your spiritual gifts, all of that. But you go down that path and it's just the opposite. Everything he said was a lie. You're now in captivity. You're now bound by his chains, and he's chained you down to everlasting destruction. Okay, there were a few more verses that really stood out to me. They really spoke to me, so I'm going to continue sharing. So starting in verse 9. And now Alma began to expound these things unto him, saying, It is given unto many to know the mysteries of God. Nevertheless, they are laid under a strict command that they shall not impart only according to the portion of his word which he doth grant unto the children of men, according to the heed and diligence which they give unto him. So again, this reminds me of line upon line, precept upon precept. The Lord will give you what you're willing to seek, right? But we have to go about it the right way, with the right intentions. And therefore, he that will harden his heart. So I'm thinking of bitterness, those who become bitter against the gospel, bitter against the word, bitter against the leaders, the church, all of it. Bitter against their Savior, bitter against God. He that will harden his heart, the same receiveth the lesser portion of the word. And he that will not harden his heart, to him is given the greater portion of the word, until it is given unto him to know the mysteries of God, until he hath known them in full. So I'm thinking about someone right now as I'm reading this, and the person coming to my mind is a person who I believe understands this and has a very soft heart. In fact, he has specialized in hearts his whole life. I think you know who I'm talking about. President Nelson. Yes, he was a heart surgeon, but I believe that he understands the scripture, and I believe that this is describing someone like him. I believe he understands this principle, this law, and that he practices it. I really believe that he is someone who knows the mysteries of God. And now I don't believe the mysteries are these deep, complicated, intricate mysteries. I truly believe they are just the most simplest, beautiful mysteries. Like, oh my goodness, that makes sense. How did I never see that? Or how did I never understand that? I believe they're plain and simple, and that they're all throughout the scriptures. But if our hearts are hardened, we're not going to see them. We're not going to understand them. I believe that as we read the scriptures with an open heart, then the Spirit can speak to us and open our eyes and give us more about what we're reading. And that's that personal revelation. So I'm going to continue on in verses 10, 11, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. And therefore, he that will harden his heart, the same receiveth the lesser portion of the word. And he that will not harden his heart, unto him is given the greater portion of the word, until it is given unto him to know the mysteries of God, until he know them in full. And they that will harden their hearts, to them is given the lesser portion of the word, until they know nothing concerning his mysteries. Nothing. Zero. It's like they're going backwards. And then they are taken captive by the devil. So at that point, they have left the path completely and led by his will. So not their own will. They might think it's their own will, their own happiness, but it's not their own will. It's not the Lord's will, but it is someone's will. It's the adversary's will. So they are led by his will down to destruction. Now this is what is meant by the chains of hell. And when I read that, I think of how many times people are being deceived. They have that spirit of deception with them. And as they allow that darkness to overcome them and rule them, that darkness takes over. And people often will describe that as, suddenly this person didn't look the same anymore. Their eyes didn't even look the same. It was like someone else had taken over them. Sort of like a possession, but just, personality change. Sometimes even their physical features, their mannerisms change. I've even heard and seen that their voice changes, and you start to think this isn't even the same person anymore, because it's not. They're no longer in the driver's seat. Once you become captive to the adversary, you give him that control over you. For our words will condemn us. Yea, all of our works will condemn us. We shall not be found spotless, and our thoughts will also condemn us. And in this awful state, we shall not dare to look up to our God. So we're no longer looking up. If we're not looking up, where are we looking? Do we continue to look outward to the world, to ourselves? And we would fain be glad if we could command the rocks and the mountains to fall upon us, to hide us from his presence. A lot of times you see portrayed in comics and cartoons and in the movies in Hollywood that God just points his finger and sends you straight to hell. It's a place where he just sends you. And a lot of people will say, well, how could God do that if he really loved you? How could he send you there? But I've always believed, and other people have said this as well, and according to Alma, here it is again, that we send ourselves there. Hell isn't just a physical place. It's being removed from the presence of God. That's hell. When you go through this life without feeling the Lord's presence, you're suffering every day. You're living in your own personal hell every day. And it's the same thing when you pass away. If you pass away in sin and you're so caught up in this awful state of sin and suffering that according to Alma, you're no longer looking up. You're no longer looking to God. You're no longer trying to find him, calling out for him. In fact, you're avoiding him because you feel so bad. You feel so guilty. You feel so unworthy that you don't think he could love you or want to see you. And so you hide. And as he says here, you wish that rocks could hide you or mountains could fall upon you to hide you from his very presence. So it's a personal choice that you make. You put yourself there. You cause your own torment and suffering. The Lord can take all of that away. He wants you to come into his presence. But we avoid him because we feel we can't face him because of all the things we've done and the choices we've made and the path that we've taken. Because we're falling for Satan's lie. You're not worthy enough to be saved. He doesn't love you anymore. He's disgusted by you. He's appalled by you. You deserve this. And it's this trap that people get stuck in. Well, this is who I am. I've made my bed. I'm just going to lie in it now. And they settle for this hell. But every day the Lord is calling out to us, come unto me, come, knock, I will open the door. I'm here, I'm reaching out, take my hand, let me help you, let me heal you, let me save you, let me show you the way, let me give you my truth, feel my love. Partake of me. I am the bread of life. If you drink of my waters, you will never thirst. Are we accepting those invitations? Are we believing that? Are we looking for him? Are we crying out for him? Because if we're not, this is what's happening to us. This is what we're choosing. But this cannot be. We must come forth and stand before him in his glory and in his power and in his might, majesty, and dominion, and acknowledge to our everlasting shame that all his judgments are just, that he is just in all his works, and that he is merciful unto the children of men. Yes, he's merciful. They don't really show that side of him in Hollywood, in the movies, in the comic books. And that he has all power to save every man that believeth on his name and bringeth forth fruit, meet for repentance. So they need to come unto him and have that change of heart, have that desire to ask for that. And now behold, I say unto you, then cometh a death, even a second death, which is a spiritual death. So a lot of people have already died that spiritual death right now in this life. Then is a time that whatsoever dieth in his sins as to a temporal death shall also die a spiritual death. Yea, he shall die as to things pertaining unto righteousness. Then is the time when their torments shall be as a lake of fire and brimstone, whose flame ascendeth up for ever and ever. And then is the time that they shall be chained down to an everlasting destruction, according to the power and captivity of Satan. He having subjected them according to his will. He doesn't care about what you want or what you think. He's not going to let you be in control. This is what he wants. It's all about him. You think you're free and you have that freedom, but he's in charge. Then I say unto you, they shall be as though there had been no redemption made. For they cannot be redeemed according to God's justice. And they cannot die, seeing that there is no more corruption. So again, they can't escape all of this through a third death. This is what it is. So I wrote, these women, these people, the saints, are leaving the church and pulling others with them. This is not the time to be leaving safety, power, and protection. Today, in the temple, the words of the initiatory ordinance stood out to me. And all I can say is that next time you go to the temple and you participate in the initiatory ordinance, pay attention to that very last part where they talk about the temple garments and they give it a name. They call it a name. I hear this all the time. I participate in that ordinance all the time. But for some reason, this particular time, it was powerful. It stood out to me and I just felt it from head to toe what this was. Now, the reason this stood out to me is because these women were talking about when they chose to leave the church, what it felt like to take off their temple garments for good, how they felt such liberation and such freedom. But at first it felt strange and difficult. They weren't used to it. They didn't really like it. But then over time, they convinced themselves how amazing this was and how they truly were free from that. Now, if you understand what that is, that just doesn't make any sense at all of why you would want to be free from that. Again, free from the safety, power, and protection. Why would you want to be free from that? I have to say that having that brings freedom because it protects you from the adversary who desires to bring you into bondage. So to see them fall for this lie that by getting rid of all of that protection and safety that the Lord gives, which falls under a certain name, a certain word, a word that we're being taught right now to study and understand, giving that up for this false freedom, this counterfeit freedom, just blows my mind. It just really shows how clever Satan is. I wrote, that's what we wear when we have them on. When we wear our temple garments, we're really wearing that. And that is powerful. With that comes power and blessings from God. And without that, you are vulnerable to Satan. So of course, that's the one thing he's going to attack. Of course, that's the one thing he's going to want us to take off and give up for good, because then that gives him free access 24/7. An article in the 2019 Ensign, I think it was March 2019, it's titled Shielded by Covenants. It says this: sometimes people consider the garment as mere underwear or simply a measure of modesty meant to show them what they can and cannot wear, an arbitrary line of what is decent and indecent. And while proper wearing of the garment certainly does encourage modesty, especially by the world standards, the garment of the holy priesthood represents so much more. President Boycade Packer explained that one of the blessings we can expect when we wear the garment properly, the garment represents sacred covenants. It fosters modesty and becomes a shield and protection to the wearer. The shield can protect us from what Nephi called the fiery darts of the adversary. If we could calculate how many darts Satan throws at us every single day, I imagine the number would be astronomical. We live in a world that actively seeks to destroy what we believe. Inappropriate images and messages surround us everywhere, along with the pressure to use harmful substances or break the law of chastity. Even more rampant is the pressure and temptation to argue and to be unkind, either in person or especially online, to mock or belittle others for expressing their opinions or beliefs, or to tease a person for something as small as a grammatical mistake. These spiritual attacks, if heeded, dull our senses and reduce our ability to sense warnings from the Holy Ghost. The list of fiery darts that Satan throws at us is literally endless and always dangerous. Elder Tanelia B. Wakalo of the 70s said, "The many distractions and temptations of life are like ravening wolves. So how are we to protect ourselves?" Later in the same talk, he added, "I promise that participating in ordinances and honoring the associated covenants will bring you marvelous light and protection in this ever-darkening world." If the darts Satan throws at you every day were literal sharp objects that you could both see and feel, would you leave a shield at home? Would you ignore the knowledge of how to defend yourself or of the path to a place of refuge? Would you put off making or keeping covenants with God when He promised that those covenants would help you be victorious? The protection the garment gives doesn't come from any sort of magic in the physical garment itself, as some mistakenly believe. Rather, the promised protection is the protection the Lord provides both physically and spiritually when we keep our covenants and express our faithful commitment to Him every day. Temple covenants and the garment are not for perfect people. They are meant to help shield and protect imperfect people. I love that. Who are trying their best to become better. People who repent when they fall and keep going forward. People like you and me. Without that, you are on your own, deceived by him. Now, more than ever, why would you not want power and protection? Satan knows why. All the people, according to Elder Holland, I'll have a link down below to this video that just happened to pop up in my YouTube feed. It was about angels, and I watched it, and in there he talks about this. But all the people, according to Elder Holland, who were not hearing the Spirit. So throughout the scriptures, all the people who were not hearing the Spirit hardened their hearts and therefore needed an angel to get through to them. Laman and Lemuel come to mind, Saul, Alma the Younger, the sons of Mosiah. Their hearts were so hardened, the Lord had to send an angel to wake them up to their awful state and really bring them a message. All of these groups, all of these apostate groups and teachers and people are seeking angels all the time, daily. And I've shared this in many of my videos. I've read emails and invitations that I've received saying, come join our group this Friday night or next month. We're gonna call down angels from heaven. Angels will be there. We talk to angels every day. They visit us every day. This is so normal for us. And they're always seeking those encounters with angels. Why? Well, it makes me think exactly of what Elder Holland was talking about. If you're not feeling the Spirit in your life every day, and you're not hearing that still small voice, you're not getting that personal revelation, that spirit of discernment is gone, you're being deceived by the adversary, your heart is hardened to the real truth, so you're accepting this counterfeit truth, well then you're going to be looking for big things. You're going to be looking for big angels and big supernatural experience and leaving your body and ascending into heaven and all of these big supernatural things that all of these groups do and promote, seek after and practice. None of them are out marketing, hey, let us teach you how to hear that still small voice. Let us teach you how to look for the little things in your life every day where the Spirit's speaking to you through these little ways, these little signs that you might not notice if you're not paying attention. No, none of them are teaching that. They're all teaching and preaching big, powerful, monumental, supernatural things. Visitations, encounters with angelic beings, right? Traveling to the other side of the veil every day. Come on these adventures with us. And that's what they're promoting. And so you can see that right here. I'm writing about this in my journal, that it's clear who the author of all of that is, who the architect of that design is. If you're feeling the still small voice every day and you're in tune to that Spirit and you're paying attention to all the little things, the subtle things, the quiet ways that the Lord is speaking to us, then you're not seeking after these big things to get your attention, to grow your faith and build your testimony. You don't need those things. And that's probably why they're not happening to you. But these other groups would have you believe, wow, if this isn't happening to you, there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with your faith. There's something wrong with your testimony. Your heart's not open. Your heart is hardened. You're closed-minded. That's why none of this is happening to you. You're not having these experiences and these encounters. That's a lie. You just go on listening to that Spirit, listening to that still small voice, paying attention to the little ways, the subtle ways that the Lord is speaking to you every day, and just know that you're on the right path and that you do have that open communication with the Lord, with the Spirit, and you can feel that peace. So I wrote, don't make that mistake. If you have the Spirit, you don't need to see an angel. The Spirit is more powerful for a witness and a testimony than seeing an angel. And I talk about in here where I had heard that. I'm gonna have to find the link. If I do, I'll post it down below, or I'll post a screenshot right here. But years ago, I remember getting a book from the library. I believe it was Mormon Doctrine by Bruce R. McConkie. And in there, probably under angels, he was talking about this, and he said that the Spirit, the Holy Ghost, is a more powerful witness than seeing an angel. And when I heard that, in my mind, it clicked, and I heard, that's why even Laman and Lemuel continued to sin even after seeing an angel. Because a lot of us would always say, how could you see an angel like Laman and Lemuel did and continue to fight against the Lord, to continue to sin and rebel and murmur, right? Well, this is why. If you don't have the Spirit living with you every day to remind you of those good feelings and truth, then as the memories of that angelic encounter begin to fade as the days go on, it doesn't matter. But if you have the Spirit living inside of you every day, your constant companion, giving you those confirmations and that witness of the truth, that is more powerful. Bruce R. McConkie said it. It completely makes sense as to why Laman and Lemuel continued that path of apostasy after being visited by an angel. I mean, it makes sense. There you have it. So I wrote in my journal, whether or not Jesus is coming soon, you might die tomorrow. You never know when you're going to die, when you're going to face the Lord. Are you prepared right now? Have you repented? If you're looking for why the church might not be true, your heart has already apostatized. And I've seen that with so many people. They start down that path and they start reading these articles and listening to these podcasts of people who have left the church and people who are writing all this anti-literature. And if they're reading that and they're listening to that, well, then they've already made that choice in their heart. You've already chosen. You're just looking for justification. These women who attacked me last year are now on this path. They are exploring apostasy and they're open about it. They're vocal about it. We are preparing to meet God. That's what we're doing right now in this life, is we're preparing to meet the Lord. Whether we meet him at his second coming and we're here to witness that, or we pass away and we meet him on the other side of the veil. We just don't know. We need to always be ready. No breaks. So a lot of these women will say, you know, I'm just taking a break, or I've decided to take a break for a couple years, or I've been taking a break for the last 5 years. So they call it taking a break, which is just another word for apostasy. That's really what it is. Because why would you want to take a break from the Lord? Why would you want to take a break from the Spirit? Why would you want to take a break from his protection? That is such a trap of the adversary. We can't afford to be taking any breaks. I wrote, Alma chapter 13 then went into talking about the priesthood. Look at that setup, you guys. It's like I'm seeing all this play out in real time in my own life on this timeline right now. I'm seeing it actually happen, and the Lord's pointing it out to me. He's getting my attention and he's having me ponder this and write about it and talk to him about it. And then in real time, the leaders of the church are saying, hey, start studying the priesthood. Start understanding more about what the priesthood is and what your role in it is, especially in these last days right now, especially in your family. So the leaders are telling us that. And then in the Book of Mormon, in Alma, he's talking about the same stuff that I'm seeing happen right now in our day, like today. Then he follows that up with the priesthood. How awesome is that? I truly believe that is why the Lord sent me to these scriptures. So in Alma chapter 13, verse 3, he talks about high priests and why they are called to be a high priest. So in Alma chapter 13, verse 3, it says, and this is the manner after which they were ordained, being called and prepared from the foundation of the world. So they've been prepared and called since the beginning, according to the foreknowledge of God, on account of their exceeding faith and good works. In the first place, being left to choose good or evil. Therefore, they, having chosen good and exercising exceedingly great faith, are called with a holy calling. Yea, with that holy calling which was prepared with, and according to a preparatory redemption for such. Pretty awesome. And thus they have been called to this holy calling on account of their faith. He says it again. While others would reject the Spirit of God on account of the hardness of their hearts and blindness of their minds. While if it had not been for this, they might have had as great a privilege as their brethren. So he's talking about high priests and saying these were people who have been faithful, who chose right, who chose God from the very beginning and have been committed to that. So they were foreordained, they were called to this position. And it got me thinking about everyone, all of the saints, brethren and sisters. If your heart has always been after righteousness and you're here right now living on this earth right now during these times, I believe that you also have a holy calling. You have a holy purpose as to why you're here right now. You have that support from heaven. And as long as you continue on that right path, the covenant path, and you do all that you can to keep the commandments and live a life consecrated to the Lord, a life of holiness and righteousness, which is pretty much just keeping the commandments and having the Spirit with you, having your heart always filled with love and loving everyone around you. If that's your life, then this is an exciting time right now for you to be alive on the earth. You're probably someone who isn't feeling afraid and fearful of everything that's happening right now. You're being lit up with hope and faith, and you feel awesome things are on the horizon. That's you. So I just had to share that. So I concluded my journal entry with Alma chapter 10, verses 17, 18, and 19. All right, I'm going to go ahead and read that to you. It says, "Now they knew not that Amulek could know of their designs." So, okay, let me back it up a little bit. This chapter is talking about the attorneys, the lawyers. There was a group of lawyers in the land, and it talks about how they had these darker motives. They had designed this plan to stir up anger and contention among the people to bring them more business. So if they could stir up anger with people and say, oh, look at these injustices, let's do something about it, well, then they would start getting clients. People would come to them wanting to have some sort of lawsuit, which would give them money, put money in their pockets. So they were creating all of this contention and feeding the people all of these lies because it benefited them financially. What does that remind us of right now? We've been talking about it in so many past videos. We see this happening right now with so many people who have left the path to pursue money, to pursue worldly pleasures, personal gain, being in the spotlight, right? Praise from the world, setting up their own kingdom, their own church, their own religion, their own group, whatever it is, but giving people a reason to follow them because there's benefit in it for them. Telling people, look, these leaders are leading you astray. They're teaching you false truths. This gospel isn't the right gospel, or what you're being taught isn't true, or you're not really free. Why would you follow these people? Come follow me and I'll lead you to true freedom, true liberation. Let me show you what your potential really is, because if you follow these other leaders and prophets or whatnot, they're going to hold you back from your true purpose, from who you really are. They're going to take that from you. They're going to suppress you. So we can see this happening way back then. And as they always say, there's a lot we can learn from history. So it says, now they knew not that Amulek could know of their designs. So they thought, he's not going to know what we've done here. But it came to pass, as they began to question him, he perceived their thoughts. Well, how could he know their thoughts? Only through the Spirit of the Lord. And he said unto them, O ye wicked and perverse generation, ye lawyers and hypocrites, for ye are laying the foundation of the devil. For ye are laying traps and snares to catch the holy ones of God. And I'm feeling that really, really powerful right now. Ye are laying plans to pervert the ways of the righteous, and to bring down the wrath of God upon your heads, even to the utter destruction of this people. Yea, well did Mosiah say, who was our last king, when he was about to deliver up the kingdom, having no one to confer it upon, causing that this people should be governed by their own voices? Yea, well did he say that if the time should come that the voice of this people should choose iniquity, that is, if the time should come that this people should fall into transgression, they would be ripe for destruction. Wow, that's what I ended with. And let me just conclude. I wrote, today someone sent me a screenshot with 400 all over it. So I'll show that right here. It has the number 400 all over it. And coronavirus. It's been 400 years since the pilgrims landed at Plymouth and made a covenant about this land. They made a covenant with God over this land. We've talked about that in past videos. We've talked about this last year. This is something that Glenn Beck has been talking about recently. And as we read all throughout the Book of Mormon, the Lord says, as long as the people are following me and not rebelling against me, as long as they're being righteous, I will bless the land. I will bless my people. But as soon as they choose iniquity They choose destruction. Again, it's a choice that we make. We choose it for ourselves. It's not a cruel, angry God who wishes to destroy his children. It's something we're raising our hands and saying, that's what I choose. It's a choice we're making. We have that agency. So there was that witness. 400 years later, from the time that the pilgrims landed here and made that covenant regarding this land, here we are again. 400 years later, having forgotten all of that, having forgotten the history of this land, choosing as the majority by what's being voted in through our laws and bills that are being passed, choosing as a nation iniquity and wickedness, we are ripe for destruction. Now, I'm just speaking for this land right here, but I would say anyone in the world who seeks after wickedness is ripe for destruction. Anyone who is oppressing the Lord's people is ripe for destruction. I did a Google search for the number 400 and found it in the news. Here's a bunch of screenshots. Dicks to remove guns from more than 400 additional stores. GlaxoSmithKline consumer hiving off Canada plant with 400 workers to Taiwan CDMO. Turkey says U.S. offering Patriot missiles if S-400 not operated. Then there was this reminder that the number 400 represents a bad request. When you're on a website and you click on a page or a link and the 400 error shows up, 400 represents client error, which reminds me of sin. The errors of the people need to be repented of. We are in error right now. Great error. This nation is in error. Okay, so yes, I wrote this journal entry, and the following day, which was March 11th, 3/11, it's like the world completely changed. It's like I was living in a world I didn't even recognize anymore, and I'm sure a lot of you feel the same way. I woke up that morning, I realized it was March 11th, and I thought, usually that's my pay attention number. I wonder if anything's gonna stand out today that I need to pay attention to. And as I got through most of the day, so far so good, right? Nothing too bad, nothing too out of the ordinary, nothing even really exciting. In fact, that morning I had made my plans already for my music time on Sunday, for my calling. I had already planned what I was gonna do with the kids. I was already working on it. I was really excited about it. I went and bought some things for it. Little did I know that just hours later, all of that would change. So my kids, my two oldest, had a youth activity that night, and they were going to Weber State for a special gathering. It was like a conference or workshop or something like that for all the youth to help prepare them for the upcoming general conference. So it was a really good activity. A lot of us parents, and I know my kids, were really looking forward to it. In fact, my daughter had invited a friend to come along with her, and they were all so excited to go. So my husband drops them off at the church and comes back home. Then President Trump comes on the TV and makes an announcement and gives us an update with coronavirus and tells the nation that all travel to Europe is now coming to a stop as a protection measure. And that was big. And I right away thought of my neighbor, who is our new bishop, who is also a Delta Airlines pilot, and he flies to Europe. And we thought of him right away. You know, what does this mean for him? And then right away my husband thinks, what if something happens to my family and I need to go see them? I won't be able to go see them. And so right away he starts to feel this unpleasant feeling. He described it as, it feels like there's this wall around me and I'm trapped. Like if something happens and I need to go see my family, I can't go be with them. I can't go see them. And a friend of mine who is German and lives on the East Coast, her mother had been visiting, and she had posted that night, tonight's the night my mom was supposed to go back to Germany to be with my dad, who's going through chemotherapy right now. And she came to be with me because I had my own surgery. So she came to support me, and now she needs to go be with him. And because of these changes, she had a hard time getting on a flight back home. Flights got canceled, things got changed around, and they were uncertain if she'd be able to make it back. But then it all worked out, and she finally got on a flight. They got her back home, and it all worked out. But there was a lot of that uncertainty. And then right after that, my husband turns on the Jazz game. He looks forward to the Jazz games every time they play. And he turns it on, and then all of a sudden he gets this look on his face, and he says, oh my goodness. And I'm thinking, did someone die? What just happened? And he just says they were about to tip off, And all of a sudden the game's been canceled. And then he says, I wonder if someone has coronavirus. And then moments later, they bring up Rudy Gobert and say that he's being tested. And then moments after that, they confirm Rudy Gobert has coronavirus. So we're putting a stop to Jazz games for the rest of the season. And people are just stunned. And we're just sitting there letting this all sink in. You know, what is going on? What kind of a world are we living in right now? This is so different. This has never happened before. Moments after that, they come on the TV and announce that the entire NBA is being suspended for the rest of the season. Whoa, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Then the First Presidency of the church announces no more large gatherings for the church. And additional announcements continued to be announced after that, which I'm sure you're all aware of by now. And so I start thinking, does this mean church is gonna close? Does this mean we're not gonna be at church on Sunday? Should I stop putting time into this project I'm doing for my calling? You know, what should I do? And a lot of us, I know I was talking to my sisters and we were all describing it, my kids were saying the same thing, is this feeling of confusion. And what I mean by that is this feeling of you're confused about what to do. You're not sure if you should keep pursuing XYZ or if you should back off and just wait. Even just with little choices, should I do A or should I do B? I don't know. I feel like I need to wait for more information because that could change things. So it's like, you know, with planning your schedule, with planning your day, with planning things with your family, with planning things with your friends, with planning your evenings, with planning for the weekend, with planning for the upcoming spring break. It's this feeling of, I don't know, I'm not sure. Sort of this, you know, confused feeling. It was all just sinking in and we were all just kind of in shock and just thinking, wow, we can't believe so much has happened so fast. Just within a couple of hours, we don't even recognize this world that we're living in. You know, we're living in a world where everything's coming to a stop, where everything's literally being shut down right before our eyes. The next day, Governor Herbert came on and made an announcement to the state of Utah that there were to be no more gatherings with groups of 100 people or more, and that coinciding with the church, that there should be no gatherings with people over the age of 60 in groups of 20 or more, and just taking all these safety precautions to keep everyone in Utah safe now that the coronavirus is here. Then universities began to announce that they were closing their doors and that they were going to move to online classes through the rest of the semester. University of Utah, Weber State, and as I heard the rumors the night before about Weber State, I thought, well, wait, that's where my kids are right now. So what's going on? I'm so confused. Well, then our kids text us and say, Mom, come and get us. We're at the church. They ended up never taking us to Weber State because of this coronavirus. So we go pick up the kids and it turns out they just had them play kickball at the church, but we didn't know. And they never got to go to this activity that was supposed to prepare them for general conference. And so we're thinking, well, this was such a good thing. How come they were kept from such a good thing? And then it continued last night, you know, young women's basketball was canceled, women's basketball was canceled, everything was being canceled and shut down. And I started thinking about, earlier this week I was at the temple and there was a wedding going on. It was on a Tuesday morning and there was a wedding happening at the temple. As I started hearing announcements of church closing and temples closing temporarily because of all of this, I started to think about, what about those who are planning to get married, who have weddings planned for this coming week or next week, and who have people who are supposed to be flying in to be there to support them and who have rented out reception centers or reserved the church and have paid caterers and, you know, have plans to have this special occasion, and now their future is being put on hold. Are they going to put it on hold, or are they just going to find another way to get married? You know, my heart went out to all of those people, and my husband told me, yeah, in Italy, they're not letting people go to funerals. They're not having funerals. And so I thought, wow, these profound, important moments in our life, whether it's a funeral or a wedding, right? Missionary farewell, these moments are being stopped right now. They're being put on hold. It's like we're taking a break, but it just feels like everything's coming to a stop. And as I got pondering that, I thought, what is it the Lord is trying to tell us right now? Why is everything coming to a stop, even good things? Now, we've talked about in past video messages, and we've heard in conference talks before that, you know, there are good, better, and best. There are good things that produce good fruits, but sometimes we even need to cut out those good things to focus on the best things, to focus on the things that are the most important. And where it feels as though we're winding down on the timeline, we're sort of running out of time, and we're in that final minute of the 11th hour, it's like the Lord is trying to get rid of all of that clutter, to get rid of all of that background noise, to get rid of all those distractions, even a lot of them being good things, you know? I mean, I thought about sports games. Our kids that are involved in competitions right now, clogging competitions, and our son's supposed to be starting up soccer soon, and you hear about all these sports leagues that are being suspended and everything's coming to a stop, but then you look at it and say, well, now all the busyness is going away. It's like he's hushing everyone. It's like there's this silence now. Yesterday when it all came to a stop and I thought, oh my goodness, what was supposed to be one of my busiest nights of the week, it's now completely open. I have nothing going on tonight. I had back-to-back all these things I needed to be at and things we were a part of, and it all got canceled. And now we have nothing going on. And I thought, what do I do with myself? What do we do? I felt this confusion. We were thrown out of our normal routine, our normal schedule. And I thought, what do we do? What do we do? And all of a sudden I just felt, go outside and play with your kids. So I go outside and I start shooting hoops with my kids in the driveway, and they start riding their bikes and we start playing games in the driveway, and I look down the road and I see other parents out in their driveway shooting hoops, playing with their kids. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is a gift. This is a blessing in disguise. The Lord is giving us time now to reevaluate, reprioritize what's most important and put our time and our focus and our direction there. And I remember praying a few weeks ago, Lord, if there's a way you could free up more time in my schedule, that would be awesome, because I want to spend more time studying the restoration like the prophet has asked us to. And I want to spend more time doing family history work and doing all these other things, but life is so busy and there's so many other things that I'm doing, even my calling, which is a good thing, right? I have to take time to prepare for that. And all of a sudden, all of that has been put to a stop. Church activities, our callings, service, right? It's all been put to a stop. I realized that maybe this is, in a strange way, an answer to my own prayer. Now I'm being afforded this time to spend with my kids, to spend studying my scriptures more and doing the things that are most important, getting our homes in order, sort of taking an inventory, a spiritual inventory with our family, with our children, and gathering them in and making our homes a sanctuary from the coming storms. It's this preparation state that we've been blessed with, that we've been given extra time to focus on what's really important. And I started to feel like that this is to prepare us for more that's coming. I started to feel like that this is a time for us to sit down and evaluate, are we ready? Are we prepared spiritually, physically, temporally, right? And it's sort of this practice, like it's a practice drill. You know, we have this coronavirus, but for the most part, none of us are on our deathbeds, right? I don't know anyone personally who is on their deathbed suffering from coronavirus, but it's impacting the world in such a way that everything is shutting down as a safety precaution, which is also affecting the economy and everything in such a big way. So it is a big deal, even though we don't see people around us, at least I don't here in Utah, and we don't see people around us dying from it and suffering from it. And I started to see that as sort of a tender mercy. You know, we've been given this time to see how things like this can happen so quickly and have such a big impact on the whole world that it affects our livelihood, it affects our income, our economy, things that we take for granted every day. It affects all of that. Are we ready for this to happen again down the road, where it might not be as mild, where it might be with something that's much more deadly, much more dangerous? Are we ready for that? So I'm kind of seeing this as this mercy, this gift to help us realize what's most important, what we need to be focusing on, and the areas that we can improve. It's like this trial run, right? That's the feeling that I've been getting. So that night, I was shopping online because it was our grocery day. We were out of the basics, you know, milk, bread, eggs, all of that. It was grocery day. So I said to my husband, I always grocery shop online. So I said to my husband, well, I better get on it because I'm sure people are gonna start to panic and the stores are gonna be out of everything really soon. And he said, yeah, you better get on it. So I sat down, pulled up my phone, spent about an hour grocery shopping. And when I went to hit charge, all of a sudden I watched as all of these items in my cart started to disappear. So my total kept dropping. It kept dropping by $50, $100, $200. It just kept dropping till it was just about down to zero. And I looked at my shopping cart and there were just a few items left. And I didn't understand why that was happening. I didn't know if it's because it couldn't keep up with what was happening in the store, if so many people were buying things that, you know, they were running out, so it was letting me know I couldn't buy those things. But that didn't make sense because it usually will throw in substitutions, right? I didn't know what was happening. But all I knew was that I had spent an hour grocery shopping and now my cart was empty. So I said to my husband, well, I'm just gonna have to go into the store. He's like, well, you better go now. So it was 9 o'clock at night. My 2 oldest kids wanted to go with me. So we drove down to Walmart, and for being that late at night, there was definitely more people there than I thought there would be. We happened to actually be out of toilet paper. Over the past few weeks, every time I've tried to go buy it, the shelves have been empty. I'm sure you're all aware of that. We had used up our extra storage toilet paper and we were finally down to just a few rolls. And so I thought, I have to get toilet paper. So we walk over to the aisle, we see everybody rushing over there, and we see that all the shelves are empty. And I thought, oh my goodness, I don't know what we're gonna do. And I talked to other people in the store. They said, we've been to all the stores around here. It's the same everywhere else. You're not gonna find toilet paper. So I thought, I'm sure it'll all work out, you know. Instead of panicking, I chose to have faith. So we walked around the store and we got all the other things on my list, and I thought, you know, everything happens for a reason. Maybe the reason I couldn't buy groceries online is because maybe when I'd go to pick them up in the morning, by then they would be out of everything. So it was better for me to come tonight. Who knows? So as we're circling the aisles and we're going back and forth, we each have a cart. We ended up filling 3 carts because I decided to get a little extra of everything. I noticed that the late crew had shown up and they were starting to bring in crates and boxes, and they were lining them up on the main aisle, and I thought, I wonder if they have toilet paper and they're about to stock it. So I walked up to one of the workers and I said, hey, do you know if you guys have any toilet paper in those boxes? And he said, I don't think we do. But then he came back to me a few moments later and he said, I actually just saw some in that box over there. He said, you can go over and get some. But he whispered it to me. So I walked over and I just reached in and grabbed whatever it was, and it was a giant, like 18 roll of Charmin toilet paper. So I thought, okay, this is what we're going with. So I put it in the cart and we grabbed a second one. And later, as we saw people that were struggling, just like we were, we would whisper to them, go over to that box, you'll find toilet paper. Well, my sweet son said to me, Mom, we should put back the second thing of toilet paper because what about all the other families who need it too? We can be fine with 18 rolls of toilet paper. So as much as I wanted to hang on to that second one, I thought it was so sweet of him to do that. So I let him take it back and put it in the box. But I had a different experience that night. My experience was good. All the people who were out, we were all helping each other out. I would run into people on certain aisles and they would say, oh, I'm looking for this. And I would say, oh, I saw that over on aisle 18. And we were all trying to help each other out. I talked to so many people in the store that night, and it was this feeling of helping and kindness, right? Nobody was in it for me, and rushing and grabbing things. We were all trying to help each other out. That was my experience. Then at midnight, we were finally ready to check out, but there was only one checker working. We had way too many groceries to do self-checkout, so we had to wait in this really long line. And while we were waiting in line, we saw other things that people were purchasing, and we thought, oh, we didn't even think about that. So I would send my son to run and grab it and come back. So it was kind of a blessing that we were waiting in that line so we could see these other things we hadn't thought to purchase. So we got home late, we unloaded the car, I put the kids to bed, and I spent all day the next day putting all of those groceries away. Of course, anything that had to go in the fridge, we put it in the fridge the night before. But then the next day in the headlines, I saw the craziness that was happening, and I was so grateful I had gone the night before. And I was so grateful that my app didn't work out, that I couldn't buy groceries online, because by the morning there wouldn't have been any toilet paper. But because I went at night, I was able to find that employee who guided me to that box, and I was able to get what I needed. So I believe that the Lord takes care of us. When we are following Him and we're choosing peace, we're choosing faith and not fear, He will guide us to what we need. He will take care of us. So yesterday, the announcement came out that all of the elderly missionaries are being called home from their missions. And again, this reminded me of what I talked about in the last video message, that prophecy from Heber C. Kimball, published in the Deseret News in 1930. Let me just read it. The judgments of God will be poured out upon the wicked to the extent that our elders from far and near will be called home. And when I read that, you think the elders, the missionaries, but then I'm also hearing the elderly missionaries. We've been seeing both being called home. Or in other words, the gospel will be taken from the Gentiles and later on will be carried to the Jews. This reminds me of the parable of the olive tree that we're going to talk about in this video message. Then he says, the western boundaries of the state of Missouri will be swept so clean of its inhabitants that, as President Young tells us, quote, when we return to that place, there will not be as much as a yellow dog to wag his tail, unquote. Before that day comes, however, the saints will be put to the test that will try the very best of them. The pressure will become so great that the righteous among us will cry unto the Lord day and night until deliverance comes. Then is the time to look for the great sieve, for there will be a great sifting time and many will fall. So isn't it interesting that that was published in the Deseret News in 1930. Here we are 90 years later, and the Deseret News posts this article that all senior missionaries are being pulled from their missions and sent home. Now, I know a lot of my friends who live in Missouri have been sending me a lot of screenshots with eagles and with the number 44 and 144. And isn't it interesting that President Kimball's words say to look for the day when the missionaries start being called home. And when they're called home, this is what happens next. And it points us to Missouri, who just won the Super Bowl this year, Kansas City, Missouri. The Chiefs. We've talked about this in our past videos. So many things keep pointing us to Missouri. And a lot of us have such a good feeling about things that might be spoken of at this upcoming general conference in relation to Missouri. We have a lot of prophecy with our church that speaks of Missouri and what's to happen there, preparing for the Lord's return. Also, a reminder we've talked about in past videos that in the year 2024, the second great American eclipse will cross over the United States, completing an X right over the area of Missouri. X marks the spot on the map. Pay attention. But we know the western area of Missouri, Jackson County, will be the headquarters of the New Jerusalem on this continent. So it would make sense for the land to have to be cleared in order to receive that city. Just something to think about, something to ponder. Very surreal. I know for me, and a lot of you have felt the same way, that the minute this all started happening, as I was standing in front of the TV, watching headline after headline, and my husband was following Twitter, tweet after tweet after tweet, President Nelson's words echoed in my mind, you better take your vitamins. And I thought, my goodness, he wasn't just being funny about that. He was being literal about that. And I thought how we have been taking vitamins. We have been doing our best over the past few weeks to exercise more and improve our health. And we have been taking vitamins. And I thought, wow, we really do need to be strong, not just spiritually, but physically, have our immune systems functioning properly and being healthy and making changes with our lifestyle and with our lives to be in a place where we're in good physical condition and we're healthy and we're in tune to the Spirit, all of that. So I started to feel blessed. I started to see this as a blessing. I started to feel grateful that this was happening. It's like this strange sort of peace came over me me as I'm watching everything shut down around me. In fact, we were supposed to go see a play tonight at Layton High School. We bought tickets for it. We were looking forward to it, supporting some of the local youth in our community who were really excited to perform it. And now it's been canceled. And with a lot of these productions and events that are being canceled all around us, they're not postponing it. They're flat out canceling it, saying we're just going to take it all down, we're just going to call it good, and we'll refund people their money. And you're thinking these programs need that money so they can use it next year for their productions next year. They depend on this money. They're having to refund everybody. Wow. So it started making me think, well, what about next year? What if next year things get canceled again? What if this is the beginning of our new normal? What if we're entering that phase now where the things that really don't matter and really aren't important are all going to come to an end? And that way we're going to be directed to what really matters in this final moment. And that's just the feeling I've been getting, is it started to feel like this won't just be some moment in history that we all talk about, but it almost feels like it's the beginning of a new normal, that this will happen again and again and again, and that this is just the beginning, and that we can be grateful that it's a mild beginning so that we can prepare for what lies ahead. And if we are prepared, we're not afraid. We're not living in fear. I had heard yesterday that my sister was at the store and she saw fights breaking out at the store, physical fights with grown adults. And it was really terrifying to watch that. And I saw it on the news. I saw lots of video footage of adults fighting over toilet paper, bottled water, sanitizer. Oh my goodness, you guys. And I started to think, is this who we really are? Is this who we've become as a nation? Have we forgotten the Lord? Have we lost that love for our neighbor? Are we not keeping those commandments? Have our hearts been hardened? Is this a wake-up call to show us that awful state that we're in? And it was just surreal. It was unbelievable to see news story after news story after news story of people fighting in the stores. And it almost looked like a Black Friday special, right? People just attacking each other, jumping over each other, playing tug-of-war over toilet paper, and just not caring, losing that love for others, thinking about themselves. You know, it like showed us what America has become. People who are living a fear-based life think about themselves. Me, me, me. What about me? What about my family? What about us? There is no good Samaritan, right? People forget to love others as much as they love themselves. So that was an eye-opener. It really was. And because of that, a lot of stores began to close down. There was a lot of Costco's and Walmarts that shut their doors because of that. And as the school districts began to close down and schools began to shut their doors, everyone began to swarm the grocery stores in the middle of the day. And I saw pictures of lines going clear out of the parking lot just to enter the store. We've just never seen anything like this in our day. I mean, I'm 39 years old and I don't remember anything like this ever happening. Period. Ever. So there's a sense of panic going on out there among people who are living a fear-based life. So again, it's a wake-up call to show people, are you trusting in the Lord? Do you have that faith? Are you living by the Spirit? Or are you choosing fear? Are you choosing faith? Or are you choosing fear? Are you relying on the Lord? Or are you trying to do things on your own? Also this week, my husband got told by his work, by his employer, that they were going to have everyone start working from home until further notice. So he's been working from home every day this week. And I started thinking in my mind how that's been such a great thing because he's here to help me. I get to see him more and we get to spend more time with the kids together. And I've talked to other people who have said the same thing about having their spouse home, how it's been such a good thing. But then I got thinking yesterday about families where they are living in a state of panic and fear. What does that do when people are no longer going into work and they're afraid? Am I going to be able to earn money? Am I going to be able to get paid? Will we be able to pay our bills? What if this continues? Will we survive this? Will we get through this? And as they start to panic, there's contention and fear in their home. And it started to make me wonder if in those homes there's going to be more fighting and contention and lashing out at each other. And last night as I was sleeping at 2 in the morning, I heard a gunshot. It woke me up out of my sleep. I was in a deep sleep. And I laid there and I thought, did I really just hear a gunshot? And as I waited there for a moment, I heard another one go off, and it was loud and it sounded a little bit muffled, like it was in a house. And then I waited, and then I heard a car screech off down the road east of us. And this was at 2 a.m. I got up and I looked at the clock and I thought, what was that? And things started going through my mind. Was it a murder suicide, or what's going on? Are people starting to panic and go crazy over what's happening right now, that it's bringing out the worst in them? All these things went through my mind, and then I woke up and I see a headline about a murder that took place in Layton last night, a shooting. I looked at the address. It was on the other side of town. Since then, a neighbor has told me that she heard that sound as well. It woke her up in the night too, and it was actually a motorcycle backfiring. But this other shooting that happened to happen in Layton last night was real and was fatal. And it got me thinking that things could turn this way very quickly if people are living a fear-based life. Family members can quickly turn against family members, neighbor against neighbor, and we could see a lot more tragedies like this as people react out of fear, in a state of panic, and just that feeling of uncertainty. And I just felt how important it is right now that we use this time to reevaluate our lives, where we're at right now spiritually, and as a family with our relationships. What can we improve? What can we strengthen? What can we do better? If we have that mindset and that approach, I think we're going to see a lot more blessings with what lies ahead. But if we take a fearful approach, then life is going to feel very scary and very uncertain. So as I got pondering about this again, I started to see all the good that could come from this. And I started to think this is giving people a chance to slow down. Because a lot of times, I know we've all been saying, it feels like life is just going by so quickly. I just can't keep up. I just can't keep my head above the water. The time is just going by so quickly. The days are just flying, and I feel like I can't keep up. I can't do the things I need to do or that I want to do. And now it's like we're being given this time, this grace period, to slow it down so that we can feel the Spirit. You can't feel the Spirit when you're living life in the fast lane. But as we slow it down, we will be able to feel and recognize how the Lord speaks to us, which is something our prophet, President Nelson, has asked us to ponder on before conference. How does the Lord speak to you? Are you hearing Him? As we slow down, we're going to start listening. And I started thinking about all these NBA players. Like, what are they going to do now? This is their life. They're no longer traveling every day. They're no longer at practices all day. They are quarantined in their homes. What are they going to do with themselves with all of that time? And I thought, wow, this is an opportunity, if they're paying attention, to tune in to the Lord, to connect to Him, to start pondering about what's really important. It's like the Lord is saying, everyone stop. Stop right now. Stop what it is you're doing and listen. I have something really important I need to say to you. And isn't it funny? I pointed out to my kids that Governor Herbert said we're going to shut everything down in Utah for 2 weeks. Well, what is 2 weeks from now? General Conference is 2 weeks from now, which what President Nelson has been telling us will be a very memorable and historic conference. And a lot of us have concluded, wow, he wasn't kidding when he said memorable. We're never going to forget the conference where all the seats were empty, where there was no congregation. A conference where it's just the leaders of the church and the choir singing and speaking into a camera. You know, all the people that had tickets to this conference were so excited because it is such a special conference. Again, we're celebrating the 200-year anniversary of the first vision of when this restoration began, what got it all started. And so it's very significant. And people have expressed how sad they are that they now can't go and attend that and be there. But you know what? We're going to be at home now with our families, in our homes. It's like the Lord is trying to get our attention, get us to focus more on our homes. And now with church being closed down, we're not leaving our homes to go to church. We're attending church at home, which we all have recognized the wisdom in our prophet, President Nelson, who's been preparing us for the last year or more to have home church. We've been having home church every Sunday. When we come home from church, we do the Come Follow Me lesson with our families. He's prepared us so that we know how to do that, so that we know how to conduct church in our homes, and now we're all prepared to do that. And then again, it's interesting that the presiding bishop of the church spoke to my sister's stake and told them that President Nelson was preparing everybody for the coronavirus coming to our state. He said the coronavirus is coming to Utah. It will hit Utah, and it will not be easy on us. It will be challenging. The prophet has foreseen this happening. He has seen what's ahead, and we need to listen to him. We need to focus on what's most important. And he talked all about that. I shared that in my last video message. And then here it is happening that quick. It's like we're living in this time period now when things are just happening so quick. We've talked about before how prophets have been inspired to share things that were way before their time. Perfect example of that is the family proclamation. Marriage is between a man and a woman. That came out, and 20 years later, on the anniversary, marriage was redefined here in America. But the prophets had foreseen that 20 years prior. So we always talk about how the prophets are always ahead of their time, and the things that they speak to us sort of manifest years later. But it doesn't feel that way anymore. It feels like now when our prophet tells us something, it happens the next day. We need to be listening. Now let's talk about why President Nelson has been asking us to study the restoration of the church. Why that's so important right now to know this, not just because we're celebrating the 200-year anniversary of the first vision. He didn't just say to study the first vision, but he said to study the restoration. So let's talk about that. I love this simple image that breaks down the restoration into the basics. So let's just follow along here at the top in the left corner. When Christ lived on the earth, he established his church. After Christ died and his apostles were killed, the fullness of the gospel was taken from the earth because of widespread apostasy. Many people sought the fullness of the truth but were unable to find it. Many preached with sincerity, but none had the fullness or the priesthood authority. We live in a time where we can partake of the light of the gospel. It is on the earth again. And it's important to note that the restoration is not a reformation. Significant events of the restoration are, of course, the first vision, which we're celebrating this year, and Moroni instructs Joseph. Joseph receives the plates. John the Baptist gives Joseph and Oliver the Aaronic priesthood. Peter, James, and John give Joseph and Oliver the Melchizedek priesthood. Joseph completes the translation of the plates. The Book of Mormon is printed, the church is organized, the Kirtland Temple is dedicated, and the priesthood keys are received. Off to the side, you see a lot of the things that were restored. We have baptism, confirmation, the remission of sins, the companionship of the Holy Ghost, understanding the true nature of the Godhead, understanding the atonement, understanding the purpose of life and why we're here, understanding what happens after we die, being guided by living prophets on the earth today, and receiving those important temple ordinances for exaltation. And of course, the new and everlasting covenant of marriage, where we are sealed to our spouse for time and all eternity. We become an eternal family, which is most important to our Heavenly Father and to our eternal happiness. While researching the restoration of the fullness of times, there was that number again, 44, April 4th, General Conference. In 1840, missionaries are sent from the church to Great Britain, where more than 6,000 people are baptized and joined the church. That was a huge growth period for the church. And then there's that number 44 again. In 1844, the prophet Joseph Smith and his brother Hiram were martyred. In the last couple of video messages, I talked about how I feel that this period that we're entering into will sort of mirror the early part of the church, the early part of the restoration. And I believe that there's a lot of things that we're going to see happening again in our time. Could it be that we receive another large surge of members into the church? We know also during the restoration it was a period of great challenges and trials for the early saints. There was a lot of persecution, a lot that they suffered. Could we experience this again in our day? We know with great blessings comes great
opposition, and we know that the Lord is about to do some great things right now on the earth. But my favorite what if is in regards to the sealed portion of the plates. When Moroni was finishing the Book of Mormon record, he was commanded to seal up some of the plates, and Joseph Smith was later commanded not to translate them. This sealed portion contains the complete record of the vision of the brother of Jared, and this vision included all things from the foundation of the world until the end thereof. So basically, the Lord revealed to the brother of Jared the history of mankind, and the sealed portion of the plates was Moroni's translated copy of it. Few people have seen the sealed record. For instance, the Nephites in the land of Bountiful at the Savior's coming, and Moroni. The Lord said that the sealed portion would be revealed to the world in mine own due time. He also said it would not go forth unto the Gentiles until the day that they shall repent of their iniquity and become clean before the Lord. If this period that we are entering right now, that's starting with this coronavirus, is a period of repentance, a grace period, a call to repentance, to help get us right with the Lord, to help get us clean before the Lord, could the Lord be preparing us right now to receive this sealed portion? I'd certainly like to think so. And it's important to note that 2/3 of the plates contained the sealed portion. So there are still 2/3, which is way more than what we have right now, of those plates that we are still waiting to receive.
You know, and my thoughts went to the election, as I'm sure many other people's thoughts went there as well, and began to think, wow, how could this possibly affect the elections this year? Will that cause further contention in our country? And I could just hear in my mind the stories that the news media would make up about this interfering with the elections and how it's rigged, and all of that. I could just hear that in the back of my mind. And it's just such a big year. It's monumental in so many ways. I mean, not just the commemoration of the first vision, but the commemoration of the pilgrims. It's an election year. There just seems to be so many big things happening with this year. And then, of course, with the coronavirus, our world got completely turned upside down in one day. That's what it feels like. Another thing that's interesting is about a week ago, I was pondering on a lot of these apostate groups and their events that they're having this year. And sometimes emails get sent to me with these invitations, so I hear about them. I got thinking about all of these events, and I started to feel this sadness and sorrow for all of the people who would attend those events and be led astray and be deceived. And I even prayed one day that something could intervene, that something could happen to stop people from going to these events with these apostate groups and continue being led away. All of a sudden it occurred to me yesterday that a lot of these events were being held at universities that have announced they have closed their doors now. And I thought, oh my goodness, I wonder if these events are now being canceled. And this is another blessing in disguise. Some of these events, I'm aware of what's going to happen there, what's going to take place, what will be taught. And it's very deceptive. It's very cleverly crafted by the adversary. There was one particular group I've talked about in past videos. I blew the whistle on this group, but I've never said their name. In my video back in October, I was curious to see how they were handling this, and so I went to their website, and I noticed at the top of the website there was a new recording, and the recording was supposed to be the voice of Jesus. This woman was channeling Jesus through her body. And in her 5-minute recording, she said she, supposedly being Jesus, was telling everybody, don't panic, don't be afraid, still come to these events. Still come to these events because you will be blessed. If you come to these events, you will be protected from the coronavirus. It will not harm you. And remember, I've shared in past videos how this woman's teachings have led to people's deaths. People who have followed her and not listened to doctors and not listened to their family or the council of church leaders, following this woman's teachings led to their death. It's just like the Chad Daybell story with Lori and Chad Daybell. People who followed them or have been in their circle have died. As I'm listening to her say, I am Jesus, listen to me, I will protect you, you will be safe, I have that power. Don't be afraid. Muster up your faith. Come to these events where you will be taught more truth. This is so important. I thought, oh my goodness. I started to think about all the people who follow this woman, who follow this organization, and the majority of them are 70 and older. A lot of them are in their mid to late 60s, but the majority of them are in their 70s and early 80s. And I started to think about all these people who are going against the counsel of our governor, the counsel of President Nelson, for people age 60 and older to avoid gatherings in groups of 20 or more because they are at high risk of getting the coronavirus, and for them, it can be fatal. And how this woman who is masquerading as Jesus is telling all of these followers and all of these people, no, come, don't be afraid. That's living a life of fear. You need to have faith in God. Come to these events and you will be protected from the coronavirus. That really caught my attention, and I thought, wow, wow. It's just crazy because this is the time when all these events are happening. There's energy conferences and other expos that are happening, all being put on by members of the church or apostate members of the church or those who have left the church, right? But regardless, their audiences are all members of the church. And I visited all their pages and they're still planning on carrying out their events, and they're still encouraging people to come. And I thought about that, and I thought that most of these groups rely on that money, and if they lose money, they can't continue doing what they're doing. I thought about this particular apostate group who has a couple of events coming up and how that is pretty much their only source of income. These older ladies who run this organization where they channel Jesus, they're in their 70s, they don't work, they rely on this income to continue doing what they're doing and to survive. And I got thinking about it. Something that all of these groups have in common is that they depend on the money that comes in from their supporters to pay their bills and sustain their living. That's why a lot of them stay on that path and won't turn back, because they can't let go of that income. So it made sense as to why a lot of these groups were saying, still come, don't be afraid, we still need you to come out. And instead of going with the rest of Utah and what the church is doing, they're choosing to keep it going. They're finding other ways to keep it going. And a lot of these groups, the majority of their supporters and followers are senior citizens, are people in their 60s or older. In the past, I've talked about how I've been to some of these events and I looked around and everybody was in their 60s or older. And I got thinking about all the people who have recently left the church and thought, I wonder what they're feeling right now. I wonder what they're thinking right now. Are they realizing that maybe that wasn't a good choice, as they're seeing what's happening in the church and how the prophet is leading and directing us and how he's seeing everything ahead and it's happening. He's warning us, preparing us, encouraging us, guiding us. He's being inspired and it's all happening. And as they see that, I wonder what they're thinking about that. If they're having any desire at all to make some changes, repent, and come back. If they're living out of fear right now, I know a lot of these groups were very much doom and gloom and feeding off of the fear of people, and that's what was bringing in the money. What's happening to them with that fear-based approach? Where everybody else who's choosing to live in peace, because they've been listening to the prophet, they've been listening to the Spirit, they are having peace of mind and this sense of relief, right? Now, the night that President Trump was speaking on TV, right when it began, I looked at the TV and it said 9:11 p.m. And I thought, wow, there's that urgency, emergency, pay attention number. This is urgent, it's an emergency, pay attention. And then my son pointed out later that he had seen a screenshot on Instagram about the president speaking at 9/11, and then my son pointed out how he was speaking at 9/11 on 3/11. All throughout Wednesday and Thursday, people were just sending me so many screenshots of how they were seeing these numbers everywhere. They were seeing 144, 44, 311, 113, 111. A lot of people seeing 33, 123, 321, just lots of patterns, just things that were telling them, pay attention with what's going on, pay attention to where your mind is being directed right now. Listen. And this seems to be happening to everyone more than it ever has before. That's what I'm hearing. And again, yesterday, as people were sending me screenshots of 44 and 144, I was reminded how I've shared in my past videos that conference is on April 4th. Could it be that the Lord is pointing us towards conference and saying, pay attention right now to what I have to say to you on April 4th. Pay attention. What's interesting is because I was preparing for this week's Come Follow Me lesson with the primary, with music time, I read in there about the wise man and the foolish man and how that's one of the songs we're supposed to sing. And someone sent me something about the foolish virgins and saying right now we're seeing that play out. We're seeing the 5 foolish virgins who were not prepared. That's what we're seeing happening right now. And I got thinking about the song we were supposed to sing, the wise man and the foolish man. The foolish man built his house upon the sand, and when the rains came down, his house washed away. The wise man built his house upon the rock, which is our Savior Jesus Christ, and when the rains came and the storms beat upon him, his house stood still. How profound is that for us right now? I keep telling my sister, I'm like, every time I plan a Come Follow Me lesson for the primary, every time I go over music time, or what I read at home with my kids with Come Follow Me, we see it play out that week. We see what we just read about happening all around us in real time. It's amazing how that's been happening. Something we also read this week in our scriptures, following along with Come Follow Me, was the parable of the vineyard and the grafting in of the branches of the house of Israel, and how we're sort of seeing that happen right now. We're seeing the sifting happen. We're seeing people make their choice who they're going to serve. Are they going to serve the God of faith or the God of fear? We're seeing that happen right now. We're seeing lots of people leave the path completely and choose to go off into other places without the Spirit. We're seeing that sifting happen right now at an accelerated rate. So let's just talk about the symbolism of this parable of the vineyard, which happens to be the longest chapter in the Book of Mormon. It has 77 verses. But in this story, it features olive trees and the people who take care of the olive trees. You have the vineyard, which represents the world, the master or the Lord of the vineyard, which represents God, the servant of the Lord of the vineyard, which represents the servants of God, the priesthood leaders, the church and the priesthood. Then you have the tame olive tree, which represents the house of Israel, or the descendants of Jacob, Israel. Then you have the wild olive tree, which represents the Gentiles, or the people who are not of the house of Israel. So let's just sum this up. So the Lord of the vineyard sees his tame olive tree starting to decay. It's starting to rot. This represents Israel rejecting God. So he does his best to attempt to save the tree. He sends them a savior. Well, there's some success in the beginning. The young and tender tree branches, or the early church, is starting to flourish, right? But the main top of the tree, which is the Jewish leadership of the time, works against this effort to save the tree. So rather than lose the entire tree, the Lord directs that the wild branches of the wild trees, or the Gentiles, be grafted into this tame tree in order to save it. This represents the Gentiles having the gospel extended to them, thus allowing them to share in this with Israel. So they're adopted into the house of Israel. They're adopted into the tree. Now, as these grafted branches start to bear fruit, as the Gentiles start to bear fruit, good fruit, as they take hold of the gospel, the original branches, which are Israel, are scattered throughout the vineyard or throughout the world. The branches that are planted in the worst areas, they do well. But the part of the tree, the seed of Joseph, that's planted in the ground or planted in America, on the American continent, it has mixed results. The Nephites serve God, but the Lamanites do not. So after about 1,000 years have passed, the Lord finds that none of the fruit is good, that the gospel has fallen away. And although the roots, or the gospel of Jesus Christ, are good, only evil fruit is now being produced from the tree. Or in other words, the church is in apostasy. Even in the good ground in the Americas, there is no good fruit to be found. The Lamanites have killed off the Nephites. In spite of his disappointment, the Lord decides not to destroy his vineyard, the world, but rather to spare it a little longer. The Lord formulates a plan to gather the natural branches, Israel, from the various parts of the vineyard, or from the various parts throughout the world, the gathering, and graft them back into the original tree, bringing them back together under the gospel of Jesus Christ. He calls servants, restores the gospel, which began with that first vision in 1820 that we're celebrating this year. It's the 200-year anniversary. And he does this to try one last time to bring together the natural branches to restore Israel, and he reveals to his servants of the vineyard to gather the natural branches, Israel, in one place, which we call Zion. In what represents the present day, the Lord sends his servants, the church, though few in number, into the vineyard to enact his plan. So missionaries going out to all the world preaching the gospel. The servants receive a promise that they will enjoy the fruit participating in Zion. In what represents the future, the efforts are successful as the natural fruit returns and the bad fruit is cast out. So in other words, Zion is established. The production of good fruit, Zion, lasts for a long time. But eventually, the evil fruit begins to return as Satan is loosed for a season. So post-millennium, the good fruit, the righteous, and the bad fruit, the unrighteous, are gathered to their respective places, and the vineyard, the world, is destroyed by fire. So this is what we were reading this week, and as we were reading it, we were seeing how this is playing out right now. We were seeing that we're at that part where the gospel has been restored, where Israel is being gathered in, and that's the role that we're to play. We're to help continue gathering Israel on both sides of the veil. So the parable ends with a warning from the master of the vineyard, the Lord, saying that next time this vineyard starts to grow poor fruit, so as wickedness prevails throughout the world and apostasy happens, he will simply gather in the good fruit, throw out the poor fruit. So that's the gathering that we always talk about. That's what's happening right now.
And I just have to add this little tidbit from the Come Follow Me manual. It says, there are many, many people who haven't yet heard the gospel of Jesus Christ. If you ever feel overwhelmed by the immensity of the task of gathering them into the Lord's church, the allegory of the olive tree in Jacob 5 has a reassuring reminder. The vineyard belongs to the Lord. He has given each of us a small area to assist in his work. Our family, our circle of friends, our sphere of influence, and sometimes the first person we help gather is ourselves. But we are never alone in this work, for the Lord of the vineyard labors alongside his servants. God knows and loves his children, and he will prepare a way for each of them to hear his gospel, even those who have rejected him in the past. And then, when the work is done, all those who have been diligent in laboring with him shall have joy with him because of the fruit of his vineyard.
You know, the Come Follow Me lessons are so inspired. Let me just tell you what it's talking about this week. This is in the primary manual for Come Follow Me, and these are the title headings. God calls church leaders to help me follow Jesus Christ. At a time right now when so many are pulling people away from the church and speaking poorly about the leaders, right? Our lesson is a reminder of how God calls leaders to help us follow Jesus Christ. I can help others in need when I share with them. And what are we seeing happen right now in all the grocery stores? The opposite of this. I can strengthen my faith in Jesus Christ. Again, we're seeing a lot of people go into panic mode, and here we are being reminded to strengthen our faith in Jesus Christ. And then it features Elder Neil L. Anderson's analogy of the tree growing in a windy environment. And the message is called Spiritual Whirlwinds, which is kind of what we're seeing play out right now. But the whole message is about building faith that is unshakable. And one of the songs that we're to sing is The Wise Man and the Foolish Man. So, you know, with everything going on right now, it is so easy for our children to become afraid and to be scared at the unknown, at the uncertainty of everything. It's so important for us as their parents and their leaders to help them build their faith in Jesus Christ, build their foundation on that rock. So as these storms come, both in the physical and in the spiritual, they will be unshaken. This is so important, and we're being afforded that time to do that as we're being quarantined in our homes and everything around us is coming to a stop. We're being given that precious time to build our children's faith, to build our own faith. The youth are seeing all of this happen all around us right now, and they're asking questions. My own children have been asking me questions. Mom, what does this mean? Mom, what should I do, right? They're coming to us and they're asking us questions. How many times as parents do we wish for these moments? We wish our teenagers would come to us and want to talk to us about the gospel and ask us these questions. Instead of us always just telling them our testimony and sometimes getting the eye roll, right? Sometimes they just don't want to hear it. But in moments like this, they do. They're watching. They're paying attention. And they're asking, they have questions. And the Lord is giving us that time to sit down and teach them. Answer those questions. Build that faith. The Lord is allowing us this time to get our homes in order, to understand our roles in the priesthood, to understand our roles in the gathering, in the work of the kingdom, to understand our roles within the family, within our homes, and to strengthen our faith. All right, just for a moment, I want to show you some screenshots from this last week.
So my birthday was March 5th, and on my birthday, there happened to be 2 earthquakes here in Utah, not that far from my home. And my earthquake app only alerts me when there's earthquakes anywhere in the world of 6.0 or higher, or if they're in Utah where I live. So when I saw this, I felt there's a shaking coming soon to Utah. And as we can see, the events that have followed this week have proven for there to be quite the shaking here in Utah. Things have really been shaken up, and it feels like we're living in a different world than we were a week ago. Now, during this week, it started out with the big story of Corey Feldman exposing his Hollywood secret, exposing the names of his sexual abusers. And then the coronavirus thing sort of took over all the headlines, and this story got swept under the rug. But it is another whistleblowing story, and it's exposing the wolves in sheep's clothing. Sexual abuse, especially in the entertainment industry, but all throughout America, is like a terrible virus that continues to spread. But everywhere I saw Corey Feldman's story, I saw the number 44. It was unreal. Here it is on a YouTube thumbnail. Here it is again as I scroll down the YouTube page. This video being 4 minutes and 44 seconds long. Here it is again, and these videos are all in order. They are all on the same page, and it's just 44, 144, one after another. And here it is again, along with the number 33, which everyone is seeing. And here's 33 again, but look what's in front of it, 113. These are all my pay attention numbers. Right at this time, I close out of my phone, and there on my screen, my phone is 44% charged. Another sort of whistleblowing story, and the number's 111. A video thumbnail of Lori Daybell, and there's the number 113 on Court TV. A picture I took when things started to get real, and I walked into Smith's and for the first time saw a shelf with this sign that said, "Due to the high demand, and to support all customers, we will be limiting the number of sanitation, cold and flu-related products to 5 each per customer." And they were all out of a certain brand of deodorant. Then came the empty canned food shelves. This was at Walmart, and as you can see, there's the number 144. There it is again on some flushable wipes that we purchased. This package just happens to contain 144 wipes. On Sunday, I shared in a Facebook post the idea that I used in my singing time in primary. When I posted it, it happened to be 1:44 p.m. And here's a headline that will be historic. Dow plunges as much as 2,000 points. Oil crashes as price war erupts and coronavirus spreads. But on the positive side of coronavirus, I love this post that someone shared. She said, "God is providing so many opportunities for good while we are here." She's in China. And He is showing us His goodness every single moment. And I believe she's in the epicenter. She's in Wuhan. We are at peace in the epicenter of the virus. We are at peace in the epicenter of His will. Fear is a faithless coward and has no place in the lives of believers. Fear and worry have no seat at our table. We're here because He wants us here, right now, for His purpose. Coronavirus wants you to isolate and stock up and take care of your own first. Instead, look to Him first while you take care of others. In community, we can do so much more than we can do on our own. God is caring for us so richly and showering us with so much good each day and every moment. And the song just plays nonstop in my head. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. It chases me down flights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. I love that song, by the way. Psalms 118:6. The Lord is with me, I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? Pray. Here is another YouTube thumbnail in relation to the coronavirus with the number 44. In fact, there's 3 4s. Now we know that coronavirus got its name, COVID-19, which is a breakup of the words coronavirus, it being the year 2019. So it got me thinking that this is the virus of 2019. Even though we're experiencing it right now in 2020, it was 2019 that brought upon this virus. So what events took place in 2019, especially here in the United States, to bring about this virus that has turned our world upside down? Though there were a lot of things that happened in 2019, we had a lot of secret combinations exposed, especially with Jeffrey Epstein. But I believe the largest event that really takes the cake is the impeachment inquiry that the Democrats put together against the President of the United States, and the entire hoax that surrounded that, all the corruption that was involved in that. It really showed where our nation is, where the hearts of our leaders are at, how they are turning this nation against each other, how they're creating that division. And they don't plan to stop anytime soon. So I believe that this coronavirus is something that our nation brought upon itself. I believe that last year our nation felt the most divided it's ever been in my entire life. And I believe something like this, coronavirus, can really humble a people, remind them to repent and turn their hearts back to God. Earlier, someone had shared a screenshot of the number 400 attached to several news articles related to the coronavirus, and I started seeing it myself as well. Here it is again. Europe USD rocket moves 400 pips and reaches 1.15. And there on the chart it displays is 111, twice in a row. And another historic headline, Spring 2020, the earliest spring in over 100 years. This screenshot was shared with me. It says in Illinois, a rare bald eagle 3-way couple have come together to co-parent. And this family unit has 2 dads and a mom. When I saw this, we've talked about how, of course, the eagle represents America. We've been seeing a lot of eagles lately. Could this be telling us that changes are coming in relation to marriage in America? I've been seeing this everywhere, but my sister sent this specific screenshot to me, and it says, 1. Isn't it amazing that in this time, Heavenly Father called a doctor to be a prophet to the world? 2. Isn't it amazing that if we are asked to stay at home, we don't have to freak out? The prophets have been telling us to have food storage prepared for emergencies. 3. Isn't it amazing that if church was to be canceled, our prophet has been having us learn how to study and have church at home? 4. Isn't it amazing that Heavenly Father put a prophet on the earth to help people know what to do and to prepare us? And 5. I hope you are all preparing yourselves for General Conference on April 4th and 5th. What our leaders tell us is from God. All we have to do is listen and follow them, and we will be fine. And this post certainly caught my attention. Latter-day Saint temples, adjustments made to temple work around the world. But of course, there at the top is the number 44. This article is about the temporary pause on proxy work in the temple. people can only go through the temple now to do ordinances for themselves, and they have to do it by appointment only. I felt such a strong urge Tuesday morning to take in the last of the printed out cards we had in our home for family names. I had 4 left, which was all they were allowing us to do that morning because the temple was so busy. I had no idea that just a couple days later they were going to close the temples and I would no longer, for a time, be able to do this work for my ancestors. So I feel grateful that I listened to that prompting. My friend Kristen commented on this post, and what she said really stood out to me. She said, "Why did the quote immediately come to my mind from Sister Wendy Nelson?" It was from Lindsay's last video from her book, where she said that after the Rome Temple dedication, she felt a new and increased clamoring from those on the other side to get their work done. Maybe because of this? She makes such a good point, and as we can see, there has been a recent push to do family history work. In fact, in all of the wards and all of the church, we've all set goals as a ward to complete as many temple ordinances as we can on behalf of our ancestors. And we've set certain goals as a ward, and we've been reporting each week what we've been doing. And the goal was to have all of this completed by General Conference. Here it is, having General Conference just 2 weeks away, and now these temple ordinances are on hold, at least for the next 2 weeks, possibly even longer. And the last headline I saw tonight before I went to bed, Crisis Management. Trump to declare federal emergency, National Guard to be deployed as coronavirus outbreak escalates.
I believe more lies ahead. This is just the beginning, but we don't have to be afraid. We can be happy, we can be positive because we can look to Him and see His plans. His plans are amazing. If we're just looking at the plans of the enemy and focus on what it is he's doing, well, there's nothing pretty about that at all. But when we look upward instead of outward or inward, we look upward to the Lord and see what it is He's doing, and we see that bigger picture, we can't help but be filled with hope and joy and happiness and peace. So that's the message that I leave with you today, that as more continues to unfold and everything around you starts to feel unrecognizable, instead of choosing to fall into the confusion and chaos and go with the world, I encourage you to look upward to the Lord. Look at what it is that He's doing. Accept His invitation to you to follow Him, to come to Him, to lay your burdens upon Him. Use His atonement. It's a gift for you. It's what will bring you joy, happiness, and peace in a time when we need it more than ever. Thanks so much, you guys, for joining me today. I hope you end up having a wonderful rest of your week. I hope your home is filled with peace and joy and happiness. And I will see you next time.